The warship moved silently through the vast darkness of space. Outside, distant stars sparkled like tiny beacons in the void. Inside, Kellen walked steadily down the main corridor, Lyra following him. Their steps echoed softly, but the atmosphere was calm now, a quiet that felt earned after the recent battles. Lyra had spent hours reflecting on what she had learned from the human beside her. His words, his actions, his patience, all of it had shifted something deep inside her. Humans were not merely soldiers, not merely survivors. They were thinkers, planners, and above all, beings capable of true courage and care. You walk as if the universe is smaller than it is, Lyra said, her tone thoughtful. Do humans always act with such confidence? Kellen glanced at her, his expression calm. Confidence comes from understanding, not arrogance. We face danger often. We cannot allow fear to rule our actions. We prepare, we plan, we act. That is how we endure. Lyra nodded slowly. She had witnessed his endurance firsthand. Humans did not merely react, they adapted, strategized, and cared. Even when facing overwhelming odds, Kellen had acted with a clarity and purpose that few in her culture could match. You have changed how I see humans, Lyra admitted quietly. I expected chaos, unpredictability, selfishness, yet I see patience, thought, and courage. You show care where others show only ambition. That is unusual. Kellen smiled faintly. It may be unusual, but it works. Humans survive because we combine courage, action, and conscience. That is how we endure, and how we inspire. Lyra's eyes followed him as he moved to the observation deck. Outside, the galaxy stretched endlessly, indifferent to the struggles below. But inside, she felt a warmth she had not expected, a sense of hope, of possibility, and of understanding. You speak of inspiration, she said softly. Can humans truly change the galaxy, or is that just your belief? Kellen leaned on the railing, gazing at the distant stars. Belief alone is not enough. Action must follow. Humans survive, adapt, and care. Through these actions, even one human can influence many, and many humans together can shape entire worlds. It is not just belief, it is reality. Lyra considered this. Her kind had ruled with strength and hierarchy, valuing obedience and power above all. Humans measured worth differently, by courage, by choices, by the impact of actions. She realized that this perspective was not weakness. It was strength, the kind that endured even against impossible odds. You trust easily, she said finally, her tone cautious. I do not. But you do not fear my judgment or my power. Why? Trust is built through observation and understanding, Kellen replied. I see your skill, your decisions, and your strength. I see your potential. That is enough to start. Fear is natural, but it cannot guide action. Understanding can. Lyra studied him in silence. She had spent centuries relying on instinct, training, and hierarchy. Humans relied on thought, reflection, and courage. And yet their methods were not weaker. They were stronger in ways she had only begun to understand. You are remarkable, she said softly. Not because of your strength, but because of what you choose to do with it. Humans, perhaps we underestimated you. Kellen nodded. We often are underestimated, but action, courage, and care, these cannot be ignored. They endure longer than fear or force alone. Lyra took a deep breath, her mind replaying the battles, the lessons, and the quiet moments of observation. She had learned that strength alone was incomplete. Wisdom, patience, and compassion were equally powerful. Humans embodied these qualities, showing her that survival and honor were not contradictory. They complemented each other. "You have taught me more than I expected," Lyra said, her voice quieter now. "Not just about humans, but about what it means to fight, to endure, and to lead. Your kind. You are more than I realized." Kellen looked at her, his calm gaze steady. "We all have the capacity to inspire, to act rightly, and to endure. Humans are not perfect, but we strive. That striving is what allows change, survival, and hope to exist." Lyra's expression softened. She realized that she had begun to see the galaxy differently. Humans were not just warriors. They were examples of courage, thought, and conscience. They acted with purpose, even when outcomes were uncertain, and they inspired others through their choices. "Perhaps," Lyra said thoughtfully, "humans are not defined by their victories or their battles, but by how they face challenges, by how they choose to act when it matters most." "Exactly," Kellen said with a faint smile. "Strength alone cannot shape the future. Choices, courage, and care, that is what endures. That is why humans matter." Lyra looked out the viewport, at the stars. For centuries, her kind had relied on hierarchy and force. Now she began to understand a different path, one guided by conscience, courage, and cooperation. Humans had shown her that strength and care could coexist, and that both were necessary for lasting impact. "You have changed my perspective," she admitted. "Not completely, perhaps, but enough to consider new possibilities. Humans, you are more than I believed. Your courage and patience, your heart, these are lessons worth learning." Kellen nodded. "That is all I ask. Learn, observe, and act. Even small actions can create change. Even one choice can shape the future." Lyra's gaze returned to him. She had learned to respect him, to understand his perspective, and to recognize the value of human courage. The bond between them, forged through battle and quiet observation, had grown stronger. Mutual respect had replaced suspicion, and understanding had replaced doubt. "You fight with honor," she said quietly. "You inspire without demanding. That is a power my kind rarely values, but I see it now. Perhaps humans are more capable than any of us believed." Kellen smiled faintly. "We do not seek praise. We act because it is right, because it matters, and because we must. That is all." Lyra nodded, her mind clear. She had witnessed the essence of human strength: courage, patience, wisdom, and care combined. It was a lesson she would not forget. She had begun to see humans not as rivals, not as mere soldiers, but as beings capable of inspiring change, fostering hope, and enduring in ways her kind had rarely imagined. "The galaxy is vast and dangerous," Lyra said finally, her tone steady. "But perhaps humans can show others a different way. A way that combines strength with wisdom, courage with care, and action with conscience." Kellen nodded. "That is what we strive for. That is why humans endure. And that is why every life, every choice, every act of courage matters." Lyra looked at him, fully understanding for the first time. Humans were not just strong. They were remarkable because of how they used that strength. They survived, they inspired, and they shaped the galaxy not just through power, but through heart and conscience. And in that moment, she realized the truth she could not deny. Humans mattered. And through their courage, patience, and care, they could change not just her world, but the galaxy itself. The ship drifted silently through space, carrying them forward. The stars stretched endlessly around them, vast and indifferent. Yet within the ship, a small light of hope and understanding burned brightly. Kellen and Lyra stood side by side, a human and an alien, bound not by orders or fear, but by respect. learning and the quiet knowledge that courage, wisdom, and heart could endure beyond any battle. And so, in the calm aftermath, the galaxy seemed a little smaller, a little brighter, and a little more full of possibility, for those willing to act with courage, care, and conscience. The next morning, the palace of Xylaris was alive with activity. Servants hurried along the glowing corridors, nobles practiced their formal gestures, and the alien delegation prepared for another day of ceremonial meetings with the humans. Princess. Lyra awoke early, her mind still full of thoughts about the human she had met the day before. Captain Ethan. Even saying his name brought a small smile to her lips. She dressed simply, choosing a modest gown of pale blue silk, avoiding the elaborate attire that the other princesses would wear to impress the aliens. Today, she wanted to be herself. Her reflection in the mirror did not sparkle like the other nobles, but for the first time she felt no shame. She had discovered something far more important than beauty, someone who could see her for who she really was. Ethan was already in the palace garden when she arrived. He was examining a strange, glowing flower, holding it carefully as if it were precious. Its petals shimmered in colors that Lyra had never seen before. He looked up when she approached, his eyes brightening. "Princess Lyra," he greeted warmly. "Good morning." Lyra hesitated, then nodded. "Good morning, Captain Ethan. I wanted to see the gardens again. The flowers here are amazing." Ethan smiled. "They are beautiful, but not as amazing as the stories you shared yesterday. I want to hear more about them." She blinked in surprise. "You want to hear more?" "Yes," he said simply. "I want to know what you think, what you imagine, and what you dream about. That is far more interesting than any ceremony or display of elegance." Lyra felt a rush of warmth. She led him through the palace garden, pointing out the flowers, the fountains, and the quiet corners where the light fell perfectly on the stones. She told him about the human stories she loved, of explorers who traveled to unknown worlds, of inventors who changed the lives of their people, and of ordinary humans who accomplished extraordinary things through courage and determination. Ethan listened intently, asking thoughtful questions and laughing softly at her excited expressions. He did not interrupt or judge her words. To Lyra, it felt like breathing in fresh air after being trapped in a dusty, crowded room. "You know," Ethan said as they rested beside a pond of glowing fish, "humans have a saying, 'What is inside is more important than what is outside.' It means that the heart, the mind, and the courage of a person matter far more than how they look." Lyra nodded. "I like that saying. Here, no one seems to care about what is inside. They only notice how tall, how graceful, how beautiful someone is." Ethan leaned back on the grass, looking at the 3 suns hanging in the sky. "That is true here, but it does not mean that everyone is like that. Some beings, like you, have qualities that are invisible to most eyes, but shine brighter than any outward beauty." For a moment, Lyra felt a hope she had never known. She had spent years hiding, feeling invisible, believing that her small size and plain features made her unimportant. Now, someone not only noticed her, but admired the very qualities that made her different. As they walked further into the garden, they came across a quiet terrace where no one else dared to enter. Lyra had often come here to be alone, to think and dream. She pointed to the stars beginning to appear in the fading light of the suns. "I always wonder what is out there," she said softly. "I want to explore other worlds, meet beings who value intelligence and courage over appearances. I want to see things that no one here could imagine." Ethan nodded, smiling. "Humans do that. They explore, invent, and dream. Sometimes they fail, sometimes they succeed, but they always try. I think you have the same spirit. You are curious, brave, and kind. Those qualities are rare in any world." Lyra felt her cheeks warm. "You really think so?" "I do," Ethan said simply. And that is why I enjoy talking to you. You see the world in ways others do not. You are not afraid to think, to imagine, to care. Meanwhile, in the grand halls of the palace, alien nobles began to notice Lyra's absence from the usual ceremonial events. Whispers traveled quickly, and some of the older nobles frowned. "Why does the princess wander the gardens alone?" they muttered. "She should be present among her peers, showing her elegance and grace." Little did they know, Lyra was learning something far more valuable than elegance or grace. She was discovering her own worth and seeing the universe through new eyes. As days passed, Lyra and Ethan spent more time together. He taught her about human inventions, simple machines, and problem-solving techniques. He showed her how humans used cooperation and clever thinking to achieve what seemed impossible. Lyra was amazed. She realized that intelligence and creativity could be as powerful as beauty and strength. One afternoon, Ethan and Lyra discovered a hidden chamber beneath the palace garden. It contained ancient Xylarian artifacts, old machines whose purpose was forgotten. Ethan examined the devices carefully and explained how humans might improve their function using simple ideas and logic. Lyra watched, fascinated, learning not only from the machines but from Ethan's patient way of teaching. "You have a natural mind for this," Ethan said. "You see patterns and possibilities that others might miss. That is a rare gift." Lyra smiled shyly. "I never thought anyone would notice." "You are remarkable," he said. "And I hope you never stop discovering new things, even if the world tries to tell you otherwise." Despite the growing bond between them, Lyra remained aware of the alien males who ignored her. They strutted around the palace, showing off their elegance, completely oblivious to the quiet change happening in their midst. Lyra no longer felt sadness about being overlooked. Instead, she felt a sense of freedom. She had found someone who valued her, and that mattered more than the opinions of the shallow nobles. One evening, as the sun set and the sky turned a deep, Violet, Ethan, and Lyra sat on the terrace, sharing a quiet moment. The air was filled with the scent of glowing flowers, and the palace was peaceful. "Do you think humans and Xylarians can ever truly understand each other?" Lyra asked softly. Ethan looked at her, his eyes calm and confident. "I think understanding begins with seeing the person for who they really are. Not their appearance, not their status, but their heart and mind. If we do that, I believe anything is possible." Lyra's heart swelled. She had spent so long feeling invisible, unworthy, and small. Now, with a human by her side who valued her for herself, she felt stronger than she ever had. She realized that the qualities she had always thought unimportant, her curiosity, her kindness, her intelligence, were her greatest strengths. As night fell, the stars above Xylaris shone brightly, reflecting in the eyes of a small, plain princess who had finally begun to see her own worth. And in that moment, she knew that her life and her world were about to change forever. The following days were unlike any Princess Lyra had ever experienced. The palace, once a place of dull ceremonies and empty compliments, now felt alive with possibility. With Captain Ethan's guidance, she explored corners of the palace she had never dared to enter and learned things she had only dreamed about. Ethan was patient and kind. He showed her simple human inventions and problem-solving methods. Together, they experimented with small machines, trying to improve them using logic and creativity. Lyra was amazed at how humans approached challenges, not with elegance or power, but with clever ideas and determination. "Look at this," Ethan said one afternoon, holding a small, incomplete device they had found in the hidden chamber beneath the garden. "A machine can only do so much. It needs the right mind to make it work. You have that mind, Lyra. You see possibilities others cannot." Lyra's heart warmed. I never thought anyone would say that about me. I always felt invisible. You are far from invisible, Ethan replied. You have curiosity, patience, and intelligence. Those are gifts, and they matter more than any appearance or height. She smiled, feeling a new strength within herself. For the first time, she understood that her small stature and plain looks did not define her. Her thoughts, ideas, and heart were far more important. Word of Lyra's unusual activity began to circulate among the palace staff and minor nobles. They whispered about the princess who spent hours with a human tinkering with strange machines and learning about faraway worlds. Some were confused, others jealous. They could not understand why she would choose to spend time away from elegant ceremonies and alien males who flaunted their beauty. The alien males, in particular, were puzzled. They had long ignored Lyra, considering her unworthy of attention. Now, seeing her engaged in intellectual pursuits with a human, someone they considered inferior, filled them with curiosity and frustration. Yet none dared approach her directly. Lyra's quiet confidence and Ethan's presence created a shield around her that the alien males could not easily break. One morning, while the suns rose over Zelaris in soft shades of gold and pink, Lyra and Ethan climbed to a small observatory in the palace towers. Lyra loved this place. From here, the stars stretched endlessly, and she could imagine worlds far beyond her own. Do humans travel to other worlds? Lyra asked, her eyes shining. Yes, Ethan said. Some humans explore nearby planets, others travel even farther. They make discoveries, solve problems, and sometimes face dangers they never imagined. But they always keep learning. And so, can you? Lyra leaned forward, fascinated. Even if others do not see the value in it? Especially then, Ethan replied. True worth is often invisible. It is not about what others think. It is about what you create, what you solve, and how you help others. Lyra felt a surge of pride. She remembered the times she had been ignored, laughed at, and left alone. Those memories no longer made her feel weak. Instead, they reminded her of how far she had come. She was learning to see her own strength, and it was exhilarating. As the day passed, Lyra began to apply what Ethan taught her to the palace. She suggested small improvements in the way tasks were organized, from food delivery systems to garden maintenance. At first, the staff was skeptical. She is only a princess, they whispered. What does she know of efficiency or machines? But when the changes worked, productivity improved, and minor issues vanished, even the staff could not deny her skill. Lyra realized that intelligence and creativity were just as powerful as elegance and stature, and perhaps even more respected in the long run. Despite these small victories, not all was smooth. Some alien nobles began plotting against her. They were jealous that a human had earned her trust and friendship, while they had ignored her. Why does she waste time on a human? One male noble muttered. We are Xylarians, perfect and refined, yet she values him over us. Lyra was aware of their whispers, but did not let them disturb her. She had grown stronger, and Ethan's guidance gave her confidence to face challenges calmly. Together, they continued their work in the gardens, the chambers, and the observatory, building a quiet partnership that was both inspiring and practical. One afternoon, as they studied an ancient Xylarian device, Lyra noticed something remarkable. The machine, long thought broken, could be repaired using a simple adjustment. She suggested a method, and Ethan guided her hands as they implemented it. With a gentle hum, the device sprang to life, glowing with energy. I did it, Lyra whispered, her voice trembling with excitement. You did, Ethan said, smiling proudly. You saw the solution. That is your gift, Lyra. Not me, not anyone else. You. Her chest swelled with pride. For the first time, she felt the weight of self-respect. She realized that her value was not determined by anyone else's opinion. She was capable, intelligent, and creative, and the human beside her had helped her see it. Over the following days, Lyra continued to grow in knowledge and confidence. She began teaching some of the younger palace attendants about the small human machines and problem-solving techniques. Even though the alien males continued to ignore her, some began to watch quietly, curious about her unusual abilities. One evening, after a long day of learning and experimenting, Lyra and Ethan walked through the glowing palace gardens. The suns were setting, and the sky was painted in warm shades of violet and gold. "Do you ever feel afraid?" Lyra asked softly. "Afraid that they will never accept me? That they will always see me as small and unimportant?" Ethan looked at her with calm assurance. "Fear is natural, but it does not define you. What defines you is what you do despite fear. You have courage, intelligence, and heart. Those things matter far more than what anyone thinks of your appearance." Lyra smiled, feeling a deep sense of peace. She realized that she was no longer the overlooked princess she had once been. She was growing into someone who could shape her own path, someone who could influence her world, and someone who had begun to inspire change quietly but powerfully. That night, as she lay in her chambers, Lyra reflected on the days that had passed. She no longer felt invisible. She had discovered her own worth, learned new skills, and found a friend, perhaps even more, who valued her for who she truly was. The palace, with all its glittering beauty, no longer felt like a cage. It was a place of learning, growth, and endless possibilities. And somewhere in the quiet corners of Zelaris, the alien nobles who had once ignored her were beginning to notice that Princess Lyra was not the same small, plain girl they had dismissed. She was growing stronger, wiser, and more capable with each passing day. The world around her would soon have to recognize it too. The palace of Zelaris buzzed with anticipation. It was the day of the traditional mating ceremony, an event that all alien males prepared for months in advance. They practiced perfect gestures, honed their speech, and adorned themselves with glowing crystals and fine fabrics to impress the princesses. Princess Lyra watched from her balcony, her hands clasped tightly. She felt a mix of nerves and curiosity. This ceremony was meant to decide her future, yet she had long since stopped caring about the attention of the alien males. Their displays of elegance and charm no longer held meaning for her. Captain Ethan stood beside her, calm and reassuring. "Are you ready?" he asked gently. Lyra hesitated. "I suppose so. But they will all try to impress me. They will flaunt their beauty and wealth." "It is exhausting," Ethan smiled. "Then don't let it matter. Watch, observe, and stay true to yourself. That is all that counts." The grand hall was filled with Xylarians in their finest attire. Tall, radiant males moved with grace, their every step calculated to display power and elegance. They bowed and gestured toward Lyra, speaking words of praise and admiration, their voices echoing through the chamber. Some attempted to demonstrate skill, juggling glowing spheres or performing elaborate dances. The nobles watched with pride, convinced that they would surely win the favor of the princess. Lyra, however, remained seated, her gaze calm and distant. She had seen this all before. The ceremony had always been about appearances, not about heart, intelligence, or courage. She had grown tired of hollow compliments and empty gestures. Then, the eyes of the hall turned to the human. Ethan had entered, quietly, not with flashy gestures or elegant robes, but in simple clothing and a steady, confident posture. The crowd of Xylarians gasped. "A human?" they whispered. "How dare he enter our ceremony?" Ethan did not bow or flaunt anything. He simply approached Lyra and spoke directly to her. "Princess Lyra," he said, his voice calm and kind. "I am not here to compete. I am here to show you that actions and heart matter more than appearances. If you choose me, it is not because of beauty or status, but because we see each other. Clearly, honestly, and with respect." Lyra felt her heart lift. For the first time, the words she had always longed to hear were spoken openly in the royal court. Someone valued her mind, her courage, and her spirit. The alien males looked on in confusion and anger. They could not understand why the princess would even consider a human. To them, appearances were everything, and humans were crude, small, and weak. Yet Lyra no longer cared what they thought. She had discovered her own strength and worth, and that knowledge gave her power far beyond their beauty or elegance. The first challenge of the ceremony began. The males were to solve a series of intricate puzzles, showing intelligence and dexterity. Many moved with elegance but lacked creativity. Their solutions were predictable and shallow. When it was Ethan's turn, he approached the puzzles differently. He studied them carefully, thinking through each problem with patience and logic. With Lyra's subtle guidance, he solved puzzles the alien males could not, surprising the audience with human ingenuity. "See," Lyra whispered to herself, a small smile on her lips. "This is what truly matters." The next challenge required courage. A glowing platform suspended above a pool of shimmering liquid awaited each contestant. The alien males leapt with grace, but many faltered when the platform shifted unexpectedly. Ethan, though smaller and less physically elegant, moved carefully and strategically, balancing each step with precision and courage. When he reached the center, he looked back at Lyra and smiled, reassuring her that he could succeed. The crowd murmured in astonishment. How could a human, so different from them, surpass the elegant Xylarians? Lyra felt a thrill of pride and recognition. For the first time, she realized that the qualities she admired, intelligence, bravery, and integrity, were not just human traits. They were qualities she had within herself as well. The final part of the ceremony was the demonstration of heart. Contestants were to perform an act of kindness, creativity, or wisdom that benefited others. Most alien males chose elaborate displays that focused on themselves, showing off wealth or skill. Ethan, however, created a small device that helped stabilize the palace garden's fountains, preventing the delicate plants from being damaged by uneven water flow. It was practical, clever, and thoughtful, an action that made life better for many, not just for himself. Lyra clapped quietly, her eyes shining. She saw in Ethan what she had always wished to see in others: true understanding, compassion, and ingenuity. She knew, without doubt, that he was the one she wanted to choose, not because of status or looks, but because he valued the things that truly mattered. The alien nobles were outraged. Whispers and murmurs filled the hall. "How dare she favor a human over us?" one male shouted. "This is unacceptable." Lyra rose from her seat, her small frame steady and confident. "I am not impressed by appearances or empty gestures," she said, her voice clear and firm. "I value courage, intelligence, and kindness. Captain Ethan has shown all of these qualities, and that is why I choose him." A silence fell over the hall. Many could not believe their ears. For centuries, Xylarians had followed the same rules, choosing beauty and status above all else. Yet here was Lyra, defying tradition and standing firmly by her choice. Some of the older nobles began to nod slowly, recognizing that perhaps their traditions had overlooked something important. Intelligence, bravery, and heart had always mattered, but had been ignored in the pursuit of outward perfection. Lyra's choice sent a ripple through the palace. Alien males who once ignored her were forced to reconsider what truly mattered in a companion. Others felt shame for underestimating her. And through it all, Lyra stood tall in her own way, small in stature, but giant in spirit. Ethan approached, her bowing respectfully. "Princess Lyra, may I stand beside you?" he asked. "Yes," she said softly, smiling. "You have earned this not by show or elegance, but by who you are." Together, they faced the crowd, a human and a small, plain princess standing side by side. The palace of Xylaris, long devoted to appearances, began to realize that true value was not measured by height, beauty, or wealth. It was measured by courage, intelligence, and heart. As the ceremony ended, Lyra felt a sense of freedom and joy she had never known. She had chosen for herself, not for tradition, not for approval, but for truth. And for the first time, she believed that her life was no longer determined by others' shallow expectations. She had discovered something far greater, herself, and the human who valued her entirely. The days after the ceremony were filled with excitement and quiet tension. Princess Lyra had chosen Captain Ethan, defying centuries of Xylarian tradition. Some nobles whispered their disapproval, while others watched her quietly, curious to see how this unusual pairing would affect the palace. Lyra felt no fear. She had grown confident in herself, and Ethan's presence gave her courage. Yet she knew that change often brought challenges. One afternoon, a sudden alarm rang through the palace. The sky outside Xylaris darkened unnaturally, and the suns dimmed. Scientists and nobles rushed to the observation towers. Lyra and Ethan joined them, looking up at the monitors displaying a massive asteroid hurtling toward the planet. "This asteroid is enormous," said a leading Xylarian scientist. "If it strikes the planet, it could destroy entire cities. Our defenses are designed for small threats. This is unprecedented." Lyra's heart raced. She had read about disasters in human stories, about ordinary beings stepping up in extraordinary moments. She turned to Ethan. "What can we do?" she asked, her voice steady but anxious. Ethan studied the readings. "We need to act fast. The palace defenses are too small to stop this asteroid, but there are alternative solutions. We can redirect it using the planet's energy channels and a coordinated series of calculations. It will require speed, logic, and cooperation." Lyra nodded. "Then let's do it. Together." The palace erupted into controlled chaos. Alien engineers and soldiers scrambled to implement defenses, but their methods were slow and rigid. They followed protocols that had worked for centuries, yet now seemed inadequate. Lyra and Ethan stepped forward, calmly analyzing the situation. Ethan explained his plan. Humans often used teamwork and creativity to solve problems that seemed impossible. They did not rely solely on strength or appearances. Lyra quickly realized that this was their chance to demonstrate the power of ingenuity, the very quality that had drawn her to him. Working together, Lyra and Ethan coordinated the palace's energy channels. Lyra used her knowledge of Xylarian machinery, learned from her experiments with Ethan, to suggest modifications. Engineers were skeptical at first. "This method has never been tried," one muttered. Ethan smiled. "Sometimes the impossible becomes possible when we think differently. Trust her ideas. They work." Lyra's hands shook slightly, but her mind was focused. She gave precise instructions, adjusting the energy flows and calibrating the channels. Ethan guided her, offering encouragement and insight. Step by step, their plan came together, merging human logic with Xylarian technology. The asteroid drew closer. Its shadow stretched across the palace grounds, dark and threatening. Alien nobles began to panic, unsure if their defenses could save them. Lyra felt the weight of responsibility but did not falter. She remembered the human stories of courage, creativity, and quick thinking. This was her moment to apply those lessons. "Now," Ethan whispered, "activate the channels simultaneously." Lyra gave the command. Lights blazed across the palace as energy surged through the channels. The asteroid, massive and unyielding, began to shift in its trajectory. Slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, it started to move away from the planet. The palace erupted in astonished murmurs. The alien males who had once ignored Lyra's presence now watched in awe. The small, plain princess, aided by a human, was saving Xylaris from destruction. "Keep it steady," Ethan instructed. "Adjust the energy flow carefully." Lyra followed. His guidance, her hands precise and confident. She realized that intelligence, creativity, and calm thinking could achieve what raw power could not. The asteroid's path continued to change, steering it safely past the planet. With a final surge of energy, it veered harmlessly into space, disappearing into the distant stars. A cheer rose from the palace staff and the observers. Lyra and Ethan stood side by side, their faces glowing with relief and triumph. The alien, nobles, stared in disbelief. The human and the small princess had succeeded where tradition and physical perfection had failed. The head scientist approached them, bowing deeply. "Princess Lyra, Captain Ethan, you have saved Xylaris. Your solution, calm thinking, quick adaptation, and collaboration, has proven more effective than all our defenses. You have taught us a valuable lesson today." Lyra felt a warmth in her chest. She had always believed that her mind and heart were her strengths, but now the entire palace had witnessed it. She turned to Ethan, gratitude and admiration in her eyes. "You were amazing," she said softly. "I never could have done this alone." Ethan shook his head gently. "You did more than I ever could. You led with courage, intelligence, and determination. I only helped guide you. The credit is yours." As the days passed, the story of their success spread throughout Xylaris. Alien nobles who had doubted Lyra began to acknowledge her abilities. The small, plain princess who had been ignored was now seen as a leader and a problem solver. Even the alien males who had once sought her attention were humbled. They realized that strength, intelligence, and heart were far more valuable than appearances or status. Lyra had not only saved the planet, but had also demonstrated the unique qualities that humans valued and that she, too, possessed. Despite the newfound respect, Lyra remained humble. She had learned that power was not about recognition or admiration, it was about action, courage, and helping others. With Ethan by her side, she felt ready to face any challenge that came her way. One evening, after the crisis had passed, Lyra and Ethan walked through the palace gardens. The suns were setting, casting long shadows across the glowing flowers. "You see," Ethan said softly, "the qualities humans value, courage, intelligence, creativity, are universal. You showed them today, Lyra, and now the world sees it." "Too," Lyra smiled. "I never knew I could make a difference. I always thought my size and looks mattered most. But today, I understand what truly counts." Ethan took her hand gently. "And that is why I chose you. Not for appearance or status, but for your heart and mind. Together, we can face anything." Lyra looked at him, a sense of peace and confidence filling her. The palace that had once been a place of whispers and doubt now felt like home, a place where courage, intelligence, and heart were recognized and valued. She knew that her life and her world would never be the same. And somewhere deep in her heart, she realized that this was only the beginning. With Ethan by her side, she would continue to grow, to learn, and to show her world the power of qualities that could not be measured by beauty alone. The palace of Xylaris was quiet in the early morning, the three suns casting soft light across the crystal spires. Princess Lyra stood on her balcony, gazing at the city below. The events of the past weeks had changed everything. The mating ceremony, the asteroid crisis, and her growing bond with Captain Ethan had transformed the way the palace, and perhaps all of Xylaris viewed her. No longer overlooked or underestimated, Lyra felt a confidence she had never known. She had discovered her own worth, and the respect she had earned was not because of appearances, but because of her courage, intelligence, and heart. Yet she knew the journey was not over. Today she would make the final choice, one that would shape her future. Ethan approached quietly, his presence calm and reassuring. "Are you ready?" he asked, his voice gentle. Lyra nodded. "Yes, I am ready." The grand hall was prepared for the final ceremony. Nobles, dignitaries, and the human delegation gathered to witness the princess make her decision. The alien males, once arrogant and self-assured, now waited anxiously, unsure how she would act. The air was tense with anticipation. Lyra walked to the center of the hall, her small frame steady, her heart confident. She could feel the eyes of everyone upon her, but she did not falter. She had learned that their opinions mattered far less than the truth of her own feelings. "I have seen many things in my life," she began, her voice clear and strong. "I have observed beauty, elegance, and tradition. But I have also learned that courage, intelligence, creativity, and heart are far more important than outward appearances. I have met a being who sees me, not for my size, my looks, or my status, but for who I truly am." The hall was silent, waiting for her to continue. Lyra took a deep breath and turned toward Ethan, who stood calmly beside her. "Captain Ethan," she said, her voice warm, "you have taught me to see my own worth. You have shown me that actions and character matter more than appearances. For that reason, and because I value you for who you are, I choose you to stand with me, not as a subject or servant, but as my equal and companion." A murmur of astonishment ran through the crowd. Alien nobles who had once mocked or ignored her now stared in disbelief. Humans in the delegation nodded approvingly. Some of the older Xylarian nobles whispered to each other, realizing that Lyra's choice reflected wisdom, strength, and fairness, qualities they had long neglected. Ethan stepped forward, bowing, respectfully. "Princess Lyra, it is an honor to be chosen by you. I will stand by your side always with respect, courage, and loyalty." Lyra smiled, feeling a sense of completion and joy. For the first time, she felt truly seen and appreciated. Together they faced the crowd, not as a princess and a foreign visitor, but as equals who had earned mutual trust and admiration. The alien males, many of whom had sought her favor for generations, now understood a profound lesson. Appearances, elegance, and status were not enough. True worth was measured by heart, mind, and courage. Some bowed respectfully, acknowledging her wisdom. Others, though disappointed, began to reconsider the rigid traditions they had followed for centuries. Over the next few days, Lyra and Ethan worked together to introduce new ideas to the palace. They encouraged cooperation, creativity, and problem-solving, blending human ingenuity with Xylarian knowledge. The palace staff, initially hesitant, soon embraced their guidance, realizing that the combination of human practicality and Xylarian skill could achieve remarkable results. The gardens flourished under their care, the energy systems became more efficient, and small innovations improved daily life across the palace. Lyra's confidence continued to grow, and she no longer felt the need to hide in quiet corners. She had earned respect not by beauty or status, but by demonstrating her capabilities and character. Ethan often smiled at her quietly. "You have grown so much, Lyra. You are not just a princess. You are a leader, a thinker, and a friend to all who see the truth." Lyra laughed softly. "I never imagined I could be this strong. I thought being small and plain meant I had no value. But now I see that my worth has always been inside me. I just needed someone to help me see it clearly." Ethan took her hand, squeezing it gently. and now you shine brightly for everyone to see." Word of Lyra's courage and wisdom spread beyond the palace. Across Xylaris, citizens began to admire the small princess who had chosen a human and saved the planet. She became a symbol of courage, intelligence, and the power of looking beyond appearances. Stories of her deeds were told in homes, schools, and public halls. Even the alien males who had once ignored her began to change. Some sought her guidance, hoping to learn from her intelligence and creativity. Others reflected on their own actions, realizing that humility, kindness, and courage were far more valuable than pride and beauty. Lyra no longer felt invisible. She had discovered her own power, earned respect through action, and built a bond with a human who valued her entirely. She had shown her world that strength is not measured by looks alone, but by the heart and mind behind every choice. One evening, as the sun set over Xylaris, casting golden light across the crystal towers, Lyra and Ethan stood together on her balcony. The city below was peaceful, its people thriving, its future brighter than ever. "Do you think we can continue to make a difference?" Lyra asked, her eyes shining with hope. Ethan smiled. "We already have, and we will continue to do so together. With courage, intelligence, and heart, there is nothing we cannot achieve." Lyra leaned against him, feeling the warmth of friendship, trust, and growing love. She knew that the challenges of the past had prepared her for a future full of possibilities. Together, they would explore, learn, and guide Xylaris toward a new era, one where true worth was recognized and celebrated. The palace that had once seemed a cage of expectations now felt like a world of opportunity. The small, plain princess, who had been ignored, was no longer overlooked. She had chosen wisely, acted courageously, and shown her world the true meaning of strength. And as the stars appeared in the sky above Xylaris, Lyra realized that this was only the beginning of a remarkable journey, one that would unite humans and Xylarians, bridge worlds, and prove that heart and mind could shine brighter than any outward beauty. Together, the princess and the human stood, ready to face the future, confident in their choices, and inspired by the limitless potential of courage, intelligence, and love.